The pen did not shake in Bella Moretti's hand. That was the strange part. Everything else inside her felt unsteady. Her back ached from carrying 7 months of pregnancy. Her ankles were swollen beneath the soft cream dress she had chosen that morning. A dull pressure sat beneath her ribs. Every few minutes, her son shifted inside her. It was as if reminding her that she was no longer making decisions for herself alone. But the silver pen between her fingers remained perfectly still. Isabella Bella Romano Moretti stood beside the long marble island. It was in the center of the penthouse kitchen. She stared at the final page of the divorce papers. Her signature sat at the bottom. Isabella Romano Moretti. 12 years of marriage reduced to 3 words written in dark blue ink. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston Harbor stretched beneath a gray morning sky. Boats moved slowly across the cold water. Buildings rose around the harbor like pieces on an enormous chessboard. Bella had once loved this view. Adriano had brought her here shortly after their wedding. He had stood behind her. He wrapped both arms around her waist. He whispered that everything she could see would one day belong to their children. At 26, Bella had believed him. At 38, and 7 months pregnant with the child they had waited years to have, she finally understood. She realized how carelessly Adriano used the word belong. A quiet laugh came from the living room. Bella lifted her eyes. Adriano Moretti stood near the windows with his back partly turned toward her. One hand was in the pocket of his charcoal trousers. His phone was pressed to his ear. Even at home, Adriano looked like a man expecting someone important to enter the room. His white shirt was perfectly fitted. His dark hair was combed back. A heavy watch circled his wrist. The Moretti signet ring rested on his right hand. To Boston's business world, he was Chairman Adriano Moretti. He was the disciplined executive behind Moretti Holdings. It was a sprawling network of shipping companies, logistics centers, and commercial properties. It included security firms, construction interests, and investment funds. To another world, one that did not appear in newspapers or annual reports, he was Don Adriano Moretti, boss. Men twice his age lowered their voices when he entered a room. Yet now he was smiling into a phone like a teenager. "No," he murmured. "I told you not tonight." A pause. His smile deepened. Bella lowered her eyes to the papers before he could notice her watching. She knew the woman on the other end, Bianca Rixa. Adriano thought she didn't. That mistake had become extremely useful. He ended the call and walked toward the kitchen. "Problems?" Bella asked. Adriano slipped the phone into his pocket. "Business." "Of course." Everything was business now. Bella placed the pen beside the envelope. "You're going out again?" "I have a meeting." "Tonight?" Adriano opened the refrigerator and reached for a bottle of sparkling water. Unfortunately, Bella watched him. "Will you be home for dinner?" He hesitated for less than a second. That tiny hesitation hurt more than the answer. "Probably not." Bella nodded. "All right." That was it. No accusation, no demand, no tears. Adriano studied her for a moment. "You okay?" "I'm tired. You should rest more." Bella almost laughed. For the last 2 months, every time Adriano wanted to avoid a difficult conversation, he blamed her pregnancy. "Rest. Don't worry. Let me handle it. You shouldn't stress yourself." He had turned concern into a convenient way of keeping her uninformed. "I will," she said. Satisfied, Adriano looked at his phone again. He mistook her silence for weakness. That had been his second mistake. His first had been believing Bella Romano had forgotten how she was raised. Before she became Bella Moretti, she had been Isabella Romano. Her father had taught her to read financial statements. This was before most girls her age had their first bank accounts. Romano family dinners had included conversations about shipping contracts and property structures. They discussed insurance, taxes, and ownership. She had grown up around lawyers who spoke carefully. She knew accountants who trusted numbers more than promises. Marriage had softened her. It had not made her stupid. For almost 12 years, Bella had chosen to trust Adriano because she loved him. There had been a time when that trust felt deserved. Adriano had once crossed the city at 2 in the morning. Bella had called to say she was frightened during a thunderstorm. He had once remembered exactly which flowers she had carried at their wedding. He filled their bedroom with them on their 5th anniversary. When Bella suffered their second miscarriage, Adriano had sat on the bathroom floor beside her. He stayed until sunrise without saying a word. That was the man she had believed she married. And when, after years of disappointment, a doctor finally smiled at them, he said the pregnancy looked viable. Adriano had cried, actually cried. He had kissed Bella's stomach before there was even anything to see. "Our miracle," he had whispered. For a while, Bella thought the baby had brought them back to each other. Then something changed. The late meetings multiplied. Midnight became 2 in the morning. 2 became 4. Adriano began showering immediately after returning home. Then came the perfume. Bella remembered standing in their dressing room with one of his jackets in her hands. The scent was delicate, floral, expensive, not hers. She had stared at the fabric for a long time before returning the jacket to its hanger. A week later, she noticed the second phone. Adriano had always carried multiple devices for security reasons, but this one was different, smaller, private, never left unattended. Then came the balcony calls. Adriano would step outside and close the glass door behind him. Sometimes Bella could see him smiling. That smile hurt. She could not remember the last time he had smiled at her that way. Then the expenses started appearing. At first, they were small enough to dismiss. Restaurants Bella had never visited, a luxury boutique charge, a private driver on an evening Adriano claimed to be at headquarters. Then larger amounts appeared through companies Bella recognized. Consulting fees, property expenses, travel deposits. Bella had spent one sleepless night staring at the ceiling. Adriano lay beside her. He had been asleep. His hand had rested only inches from hers. She could have woken him. She could have asked him directly, "Is there someone else?" Instead, her son moved inside her. Bella placed both hands over her stomach, and something changed. She realized she no longer needed an explanation. She needed facts. So she began following the money. For 1 month, Adriano believed his pregnant wife was choosing nursery furniture. He thought she was resting between medical appointments. Meanwhile, Bella quietly reconstructed pieces of his hidden life. She wrote down dates and saved statements. She compared corporate expenses and preserved records. She checked property documents, and with every answer she found, another piece of her marriage disappeared. The worst part was not imagining Adriano touching another woman. It was remembering where Bella had been while he did it. At the hospital. At home with nausea so severe she could barely stand. Sitting alone after a specialist warned her about stress. The doctor said it could complicate an already difficult pregnancy. There had been nights when Bella wanted nothing more than her husband's hand around hers. Adriano had treated those nights as obligations he could escape. That was the betrayal she could not forgive. He wasn't simply running toward another woman. He seemed relieved to be running away from Bella when she needed him most. "Bella." She looked up. Adriano was putting on his jacket. "I said I'm leaving." "Oh." He stepped toward her and kissed her forehead. The gesture was automatic. It was almost insulting in its familiarity. "Don't stay up." "I won't." His hand briefly touched her stomach. "How is my boy?" Bella looked directly into his eyes, protected. Adriano smiled, completely missing the meaning. "Good." He turned and walked toward the private elevator. Bella remained beside the marble island. The doors opened. Adriano stepped inside. For 1 moment he looked back at her. His pregnant wife, quiet, apparently harmless. Then the doors closed. Bella waited. 5 seconds. 10. She listened until the faint mechanical hum disappeared beneath the penthouse. Only then did her shoulders drop. She closed her eyes. The strength she had been holding together all morning cracked. It cracked for 1 dangerous second. Her hand moved instinctively over her belly. "Just a little longer," she whispered. The baby moved beneath her palm. Bella opened her eyes. No tears. Not yet. She walked across the kitchen toward a cabinet Adriano almost never used. Behind a row of crystal glasses was a narrow locked drawer. Bella entered the code. The lock clicked. She pulled it open. Inside was another manila envelope. This one was much thicker than the divorce papers. Bella carried it back to the island and emptied its contents across the marble. Bank statements, wire transfer records, corporate expense reports, property documents, photographs, travel confirmations, copies of trust provisions, a luxury condominium lease, a jeweler's invoice, 2 passenger names on an upcoming private flight. Adriano Moretti and Bianca Rixa. Bella stared at the evidence. Then she reached for the final sheet. At the top, Written carefully in her own handwriting were two words, Bianca Rixa. Bella's expression hardened. For weeks she had believed she was investigating an affair. She wasn't. She was investigating something much larger. Because Adriano's greatest mistake had not been choosing another woman. It had been deciding whose money he would use to pay for her. Bella rested one hand protectively over her unborn son. Then she looked down at the financial records again. Her voice was barely louder than the harbor wind against the glass. You should have spent your own money, Adriano. At 2:17 the next morning, Bella discovered a bigger secret. Bianca Rixa was not Adriano's most dangerous secret. The penthouse was silent when she opened the financial records on her private laptop. She expected to confirm nothing more than an affair. Instead, one transaction stopped her cold. The waterfront condominium Adriano had secured for Bianca had not been paid from his personal account. The money had come from Moretti Legacy Holdings. It went through a discretionary account Bella recognized immediately. Years earlier, Don Matteo Moretti had explained that account at a family dinner. It existed to preserve property and capital for the next generation. Bella slowly placed her hand over her stomach. Adriano had used money protecting his unborn child to build another woman a home. She kept digging. The condominium was only the beginning. A jewelry deposit had traveled through a Moretti hospitality subsidiary. Bianca's leased car was registered to a security company controlled by the family. Restaurant bills appeared beneath investor relations. Even the private flight to St. Bartholomew had been categorized as international business development. Bella stared at the departure date. By then, she would be entering her 8th month. Her doctor had already forbidden her from flying. Adriano had not merely planned a vacation without her. He had chosen the exact period when pregnancy made it impossible for her to appear unexpectedly. Then Bella found the calendar archive. Adriano had forgotten that an old family account still synchronized certain appointments across devices. One entry read, 6B final walkthrough. BR arriving at 6:30. Champagne confirm ring. Bella opened the attached property file. Photographs filled the screen. Pale stone floors, harbor views, and designer furniture. A bedroom overlooking the Charles River. On the final page was Bianca's handwritten approval beside a furniture selection. Bella recognized the handwriting. Bianca had once sent her a congratulatory card after the pregnancy announcement. You deserve every happiness, Bianca had written. Bella closed her eyes, but only for a moment. 12 years of marriage wanted her to scream. Romano blood told her to verify everything first. She copied every document onto an encrypted drive. She photographed the relevant screens. She created a timeline connecting dates, payments, companies, and meetings. By sunrise, the affair had become something else entirely. It was evidence of systematic misuse of family-controlled assets. That distinction mattered. Adultery could destroy a marriage. Money could threaten a dynasty. At 9 o'clock that morning, Bella entered a private dining room. It was beneath an old Boston club where phones were surrendered at the door. Don Matteo Moretti was already waiting. Adriano's father had retired from daily operations years earlier. But retirement had never meant surrendering power. Beside him sat Elena Vescari, the family's trusted attorney. Matteo looked at Bella's pregnant belly, then at the thick envelope she placed before him. If you came asking me to punish my son for cheating, he said, you came to the wrong man. Bella pushed the first bank statement across the table. I didn't come about your son's mistress. Matteo's eyes narrowed. Bella placed her palm over her unborn child. I came because Adriano is spending your grandson's inheritance on her. Don Matteo Moretti did not touch the bank statement for almost 10 seconds. That frightened Bella more than anger would have. The old man sat perfectly still beneath the private club's amber lights. He studied her as if deciding whether she had brought him evidence or declared war on his only son. Elena Vescari finally reached for the document. Her eyes moved across the transfers and corporate codes. She checked the condominium payments, jewelry deposit, and aircraft reservation. The attorney's expression changed first. Matteo, she murmured. This did not come from Adriano's distribution account. Matteo's jaw tightened. I can see that. Bella remained seated, one hand beneath her belly. She had expected disbelief. Instead, she was watching recognition. Matteo opened the remaining documents himself. With each page, his face became colder. Bella explained nothing unnecessarily. She allowed numbers to speak. Apartment 6B had been funded through Moretti Legacy Holdings. Bianca's vehicle belonged to a subsidiary. Her consulting company had received unexplained payments. Even the St. Bartholomew flight had been hidden beneath an international development budget. When Matteo finally looked up, Bella saw something deeper than embarrassment in his eyes. "How much does Adriano know about what you discovered?" he asked. "Nothing." Matteo leaned back. "And instead of confronting him, you came here." Bella's sun shifted sharply inside her. She breathed through the discomfort before answering. "If he had spent his own money, I would have brought him divorce papers. He spent protected money. That made this bigger than my marriage." Elena rose and crossed toward a locked cabinet built into the wall. She removed a thick leather folder embossed with the Moretti crest and placed it before Bella. "There is something Adriano never understood," she said. "He believes being boss means ownership." Bella opened the folder. The pages were decades old. They were filled with trusts, holding companies, and succession agreements. They included voting restrictions and beneficiary protections. Matteo's father had built the structure. He had watched another powerful family collapse when its heir gambled away properties that generations had accumulated. Moretti ports, warehouses, residences, and aircraft were protected. Controlling shares and investment portfolios were separated from any individual boss. Adriano commanded the empire, but much of it had never personally belonged to him. Then Elena turned to a marked provision. Bella read it twice. A steward who deliberately misused protected assets could have his authority suspended by the trustees. It applied if he endangered succession property or acted against the interests of a bloodline beneficiary. Bella's pulse accelerated. "The beneficiary?" she asked, although she already knew. Matteo's gaze dropped toward her stomach. "My grandson." The room suddenly felt smaller. Bella closed the document carefully, then stopped Adriano from touching the accounts. "I don't want his position." Matteo studied her. "Why not?" Bella met his eyes. "Because protecting my son and replacing my husband are not the same thing." For the first time, Matteo smiled. But there was no warmth in it. It was the expression of an old strategist who had just discovered the strongest piece on his board. It had been hiding in plain sight. Elena slid another document toward Bella. Across the top were the words "Emergency Protective Stewardship." Bella's name had already been typed beneath them. Her breath caught. "You prepared this before I arrived," she whispered. Matteo shook his head. "No, Isabella. I prepared it 7 years ago." Bella stared at him. Matteo folded his hands. "Adriano thinks today is the beginning of his downfall. He is wrong. I started preparing for this long before Bianca Rixa existed." Bella stared at the 7-year-old document. Adriano's name seemed to blur beneath the club's amber light. Matteo had anticipated his own son's failure before Bianca existed. It was before Bella became pregnant. Perhaps even before Adriano began treating the Moretti Empire like personal property. Matteo explained that 7 years earlier, Adriano had quietly attempted to pledge a trust-owned warehouse. It was collateral for a private investment. The transaction had been stopped before damage occurred, but Matteo had understood the warning. He ordered Elena to prepare emergency stewardship documents and never activated them. "I wanted my son to prove me wrong," Matteo said. Instead, he became more careful about hiding what he was doing. Bella felt no satisfaction. The revelation made Adriano's betrayal worse. It suggested Bianca was not the disease. She was merely the newest symptom. Elena explained that they still needed clean evidence. They needed independent verification and a formal trustee vote. Bella could not simply receive an empire because her husband cheated. Every transaction had to establish misuse of protected assets and danger to the unborn beneficiary. Until then, Adriano could suspect nothing. Bella returned home carrying no documents. She wore the same quiet expression she had worn for months. That evening, Adriano sat beside her discussing nursery colors. His second phone vibrated twice inside his jacket. Bella watched him silence it without checking the screen. "Everything okay?" she asked. Adriano kissed her temple. "Nothing important." Their son kicked beneath Bella's hand. She wondered whether lies became easier when repeated often enough. The following weeks became an exhausting performance. Bella attended medical appointments and smiled through family dinners. She discussed bassinets and allowed Adriano to believe pregnancy had made her dependent. Behind that illusion, Elena's forensic team traced payments through Moretti's subsidiaries. Bianca Rixa Consulting had received hundreds of thousands in questionable strategy fees. A company vehicle had been assigned to Bianca without authorization. Renovations at apartment 6B had been billed as executive hospitality. Most disturbing was a transfer scheduled for the following Friday. Another large payment from the protected discretionary fund into an account connected to Bianca's company. Bella forwarded the record to Elena. The reply contained only 4 words. Now we have intent. Bianca, meanwhile, became reckless. A cream box arrived at the penthouse containing expensive maternity dresses. Everyone was deliberately too small for Bella's pregnant body. There was no card. There did not need to be. Bella recognized the boutique from Bianca's social photographs. She stood beside the box for a long moment, feeling humiliation burn behind her eyes. Then she called a women's shelter and donated everything unopened. Bianca wanted anger. Bella refused to give her even that. That night, Adriano came home after midnight carrying Bianca's perfume on his collar. He found Bella asleep with one hand over her stomach and quietly entered the shower. When the bathroom door closed, Bella opened her eyes. His second phone lay charging beside the bed. A message illuminated the screen before disappearing. Bella saw only one sentence, but it changed the timetable completely. Once the wife is gone, transfer the rest before your father notices. Bella stared toward the shower, her heartbeat pounding. Bianca was not merely enjoying Adriano's stolen money. She knew where it came from. By Friday evening, Bella had learned that silence could make an arrogant man confess without speaking. She sat at the marble island while Adriano dressed for what he called an investor dinner. She watched him choose cufflinks and answer Bianca's messages. He moved through the penthouse with the confidence of a man who believed every locked door belonged to him. What he did not know was that Elena's investigators had traced Bianca's message. It linked to a planned transfer scheduled for Monday morning. If completed, millions in protected capital would move through a consulting entity Adriano controlled. It would go into a private investment vehicle. Matteo had authorized the emergency council meeting. The trustees were ready. Bella needed only one final separation between her marriage and the coming governance battle. The thin manila envelope beside her contained it. Adriano entered the kitchen, adjusting his watch. "Cancel dinner," he said. "I'll be late." Bella looked at him and remembered another Adriano. He was the man who once slept upright beside her hospital bed after their second miscarriage, because she was afraid to wake alone. For weeks, she had wondered whether that man still existed somewhere beneath the lies. Now she understood that loving who someone had been could become a trap. It was another way of refusing to see who they had chosen to become. She rested one hand beneath her belly. "I already canceled it." Adriano barely looked up. "Good." Bella pushed the envelope toward him. "I canceled something else too." He opened it and his expression changed. "Divorce." The word came out almost offended. Bella watched his eyes race across the pages. No alimony demand, no attempt to claim his personal accounts, no public accusation of adultery. The settlement was so clean that suspicion immediately replaced shock. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Leaving." Adriano laughed once, but there was no humor in it. 7 months pregnant. Where exactly are you going? Bella felt her son move. "To someone who needs me more than you do." His face hardened. She saw the conclusion form instantly. Another man. His wounded pride did what Elena predicted. It prevented him from asking the right questions. "You've been cheating on me," Adriano whispered. Bella never answered. She simply placed the pen beside his hand. "You wanted freedom, Adriano. Take it." For several seconds he stared at her, furious and calculating. Then his gaze returned to the settlement. Bella could almost see Bianca, St. Bartholomew, and apartment 6B passing through his mind. Freedom was sitting in front of him without a financial war attached. Greed defeated caution. Adriano signed with an angry flourish. "Don't ever come back asking me for anything." Bella collected her copy. "I won't." She lifted the single suitcase waiting beside the elevator. Adriano watched without offering to help. As the doors opened, Bella turned once toward the home where 12 years of her life had disappeared behind polished marble and expensive glass. "Goodbye, Adriano." The doors closed before he answered. Inside the descending elevator, Bella finally released the breath trapped inside her chest. Her phone vibrated. Elena's message appeared. Signature confirmed. Bella typed one word, yes. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by the sentence Adriano would never see coming. Then Monday's vote proceeds. Upstairs, Adriano was already calling Bianca to celebrate. Downstairs, Bella stepped into Matteo's waiting car. She knew her husband had just signed divorce papers, while the real document capable of ending his reign had not yet reached the table. At 10:03 Monday morning, Adriano Moretti walked into the executive boardroom. He believed the most dangerous woman in his life had already left him. He was 3 minutes late, carrying coffee. He wore the satisfied expression of a man who had spent the weekend celebrating his freedom with Bianca. That expression disappeared when he saw his father seated at the head of the table. Matteo had not occupied that chair in 4 years. Elena Vescari sat beside him with 3 sealed folders arranged before her. 2 trustees watched through secure screens. No assistants waited outside. No quarterly reports covered the table. Even Adriano's usual chair had been moved farther from the head. He stopped walking. What happened? Matteo looked at the clock. "Sit down." Adriano lowered himself into the chair. Irritation replacing unease. "If this is about projections, the new shipping acquisition will close Thursday." Elena opened the first folder. Apartment 6B, Harbor House. A 2-year lease funded through Moretti Legacy Holdings. Adriano's face tightened. She opened the second. $180,000 transferred to Belandi Jewelers through an executive hospitality account. Vehicle lease assigned to Bianca Rixa through Moretti Protective Services. Private aviation expenses classified as international development. Adriano stared at her. "Where did you get this?" Matteo answered before Elena could. "From the records you were arrogant enough to leave behind." Adriano pushed back from the table. "Bella." His wife's name sounded like an accusation. "She went through my accounts." "Your accounts?" Matteo repeated quietly. The room became colder. "That is precisely why we are here." Elena placed the old trust agreement before Adriano and turned directly to the succession provision. She explained each sentence without emotion. Misuse of protected assets, conduct against the interests of a bloodline beneficiary, emergency suspension of stewardship authority. Adriano's anger slowly became fear. "This is ridiculous. I run Moretti Holdings." Matteo leaned forward. "You manage what generations built. You never owned it." The trustees voted one after another. Adriano's discretionary authority was suspended. Trust-linked voting rights were reassigned. Access to protected accounts was frozen. Residences, aircraft, vehicles, controlling shares, and designated operating assets moved under protective stewardship pending full review. Each decision landed harder than the last. Adriano stood. "Who controls it now?" Nobody answered immediately. His breathing became audible. "Father, who did you give my empire to?" Matteo's gaze moved toward the closed boardroom doors. They opened. Bella entered wearing a deep blue maternity dress. One hand rested beneath the curve of her stomach. She looked exhausted, but there was nothing weak about her. Adriano stared as though the dead had walked into the room. "You." Bella took the empty chair beside Matteo. Elena opened the final folder. By unanimous trustee vote, Isabella Romano Moretti is appointed lead protective steward for the unborn Moretti beneficiary. This is subject to independent fiduciary oversight. Adriano's face drained of color. "You took everything." Bella met his eyes. "No, I protected what was never yours to give away." His phone buzzed on the table. Bianca's name flashed across the screen beside a photograph of a wedding dress. Nobody spoke. Adriano looked at the phone, then at Bella. He finally understood the trap. He had spent the weekend believing he was a free mafia boss preparing a new life. In reality, he had become something far more humiliating, a boss whose kingdom no longer answered to him. Bianca Rixa learned that Adriano had lost his kingdom when a waiter returned her platinum card. He held it between 2 fingers and quietly said it had been declined. She was sitting inside an expensive boutique cafe, surrounded by shopping bags and wedding magazines. She was wearing the diamond bracelet Adriano had bought through a Moretti account. For several seconds, she simply stared at the card. Adriano Moretti's cards did not decline. She tried again. Declined. Then her phone displayed another notification. The company vehicle assigned to her had been recalled. Before she could process it, an email arrived. It informed her that access to apartment 6B had been suspended pending review of the corporate lease. Bianca called Adriano immediately. He answered on the 7th ring, breathing like someone had been running. "What did you do?" she demanded. Silence followed. Then Adriano said the 5 words she had never imagined hearing. "It was never really mine." Bianca drove to Moretti headquarters before anyone could collect the car. Security refused her entrance, so she screamed Adriano's name until Elena Vescari authorized her escort upstairs. When the boardroom doors opened, Bianca expected chaos. Instead, she found something worse. Bella sat calmly beside Matteo with financial documents spread before her, 7 months pregnant and completely composed. Adriano stood near the windows, stripped of the confidence Bianca had mistaken for power. "Tell them this is temporary," Bianca demanded. Adriano did not answer. She looked at Bella. "You did this because he chose me." Bella's expression barely changed. "No, Bianca. If Adriano had bought you an apartment with his own money, I would have divorced him and never learned your address." Elena slid an inventory across the table. The condominium belonged to a Moretti-controlled entity. The vehicle was corporate property. The travel booking had been purchased through protected funds and canceled. Certain jewelry remained under review because invoices showed direct purchase by a family holding company rather than a completed personal gift. Anything Bianca legally owned would remain hers. Anything she had merely been allowed to use would be returned. Bianca's face whitened as each luxury vanished from the life she had already imagined. "The ring," she whispered. Elena glanced down. "There is no completed transfer establishing ownership. It remains secured." Bianca turned on Adriano. "You told me it was mine." His reply came painfully quiet. "I thought everything was mine." That sentence destroyed something between them. Bianca had not fallen in love with a salary, a man, or even Adriano's name. She had fallen in love with doors opening before she reached them. Bella saw the realization move across Bianca's face. She almost pitied her until Bianca stepped forward, eyes burning. "You used that baby to steal his birthright." Bella rose slowly, one hand supporting her back. The room went silent. "My child is not a weapon," she said. "He is the beneficiary Adriano stole from." Bianca froze. Bella moved closer, her voice controlled. "You thought you were taking my place. You never understood my place." She touched the folder containing the trust documents. "I was never fighting you for Adriano. I was protecting my son from both of you." Security entered quietly behind Bianca. For the first time, she looked toward Adriano for rescue. He lowered his eyes. Bianca finally understood the truth Bella had discovered weeks earlier. The penthouse, aircraft, cars, accounts, and influence had never followed Adriano because he was powerful. They followed the Moretti Trust because he had been trusted. Now they followed Bella. Bella returned to the Moretti penthouse at dusk. She discovered that winning sounded exactly like an empty room. No Adriano speaking sharply into a phone. No cigar smoke drifting beneath the study door. No expensive shoes crossing marble floors after midnight. Security had already changed every access code. Adriano's personal belongings were being packed under Elena's supervision. Bella had insisted they be delivered to a respectable, furnished apartment. It was paid from her personal account for 3 months. Matteo had questioned the mercy. Bella corrected him. "It isn't mercy. He is still my child's father. I will set boundaries without stripping him of dignity." Then she entered Adriano's private lounge alone, and finally allowed 12 years of memories to reach her. She found their wedding photograph behind bottles of whiskey. It was pushed against the wall, as though Adriano had forgotten it existed. Bella lifted it carefully. She was 26 in the picture, smiling at a man she believed would protect her forever. Adriano looked at her as if no other woman existed. Bella sank onto the leather sofa and cried for the first time since discovering Bianca. The tears were not for the penthouse or the trust. They were for hospital nights Adriano had missed. They were for promises he had broken, and the younger woman in the photograph who had believed loyalty could be guaranteed by love. Her son moved beneath her heart. Bella wiped her face. We're done mourning people who chose to leave us, she whispered. The next morning workers arrived. Adriano's cigar lounge disappeared first. The black leather furniture, enormous televisions, neon bar, and glass humidor were removed. In their place, Bella ordered pale wood, warm rugs, bookshelves, and a mural showing Boston Harbor from a quiet park. She wanted her child to grow up seeing the city from the ground, not believing height made him superior. But rebuilding the home proved easier than rebuilding Moretti Holdings. Elena's audit uncovered questionable consulting contracts and vanity acquisitions. There were hidden entertainment expenses and shell vendors connected to Adriano's allies. Bella refused Matteo's suggestion to quietly bury embarrassing records. If I protect corruption because it carries our name, I become Adriano. That answer traveled through the organization faster than any threat could have. Bella hired independent auditors. She appointed David Chen, a respected logistics executive with no family allegiance, to oversee legitimate operations. At their first strategy meeting, an executive proposed acquiring 3 competitors. He simply wanted to prove Moretti remained dominant after Adriano's removal. Bella listened, then closed the presentation. No. The room stiffened. We have spent years trying to look powerful instead of becoming stable. She placed her hand over her belly. I don't want the biggest empire. I want the strongest one. That evening, Elena arrived carrying a sealed forensic report. Bella expected more waste. Instead, Elena locked the study door before speaking. We found something Adriano didn't authorize. Bella's pulse quickened. Elena opened the file. Bianca's consulting company had received money before her affair with Adriano supposedly began. The first transfer was dated nearly 3 years earlier. It carried an approval code belonging to someone else inside the Moretti structure. Bella stared at the signature. It belonged to Matteo. For the first time since taking control, Bella wondered whether the man who helped save her child had been telling her the whole truth. Bella carried Matteo's signature into the next morning like a knife hidden beneath silk. She said nothing during the executive meeting, even when Matteo joined by video and calmly discussed restructuring the harbor division. Instead, she watched him. 3 years earlier, before Adriano's affair supposedly began, Matteo had authorized the first payment to Bianca Rixa Consulting. Either Bianca had lied about when she entered the Moretti world, or Matteo had. Bella waited until the meeting ended, then placed the forensic report before Elena. Bring him here. Elena hesitated. Bella, your blood pressure. Bella's stare stopped her. I trusted him with my son's future. I need to know whether that trust was earned. Matteo arrived 40 minutes later. He read the transfer record without surprise. That frightened Bella more than denial. You knew Bianca, she asked. Matteo slowly removed his glasses. He admitted hiring Bianca 3 years earlier as an outside acquisition. Her company had been legitimate then. She was intelligent, ambitious, and unusually skilled at gaining access to powerful men. Matteo had terminated the arrangement after discovering she was cultivating personal relationships with executives connected to Moretti Holdings. Why didn't you tell Adriano? Bella demanded. Matteo's silence answered first. He had warned his son privately, but Adriano dismissed him. Months later, Bianca reappeared through another subsidiary. Matteo suspected what was happening but lacked proof of an affair or misuse of protected money. So you watched? Bella said. I waited, Matteo corrected. Bella's expression hardened. Those are often the same thing when someone else pays the price. Before Matteo could respond, a sudden pressure tightened across Bella's abdomen. She gripped the table. Elena moved immediately, but Bella raised one hand. The contraction passed. Then another came 12 minutes later. Her doctor answered on the first call and ordered her to the hospital. Bella tried to finish the meeting until a third contraction bent her forward. David Chen quietly closed his folder. Bella exhaled through the pain and looked around the table. Move Thursday's vote, she said. My son appears to be on a deadline. Luca Matteo Moretti entered the world at 4:18 the following morning. He was healthy, furious, and loud enough to make Bella laugh through exhausted tears. Hours later, Matteo entered her private room alone. The old boss seemed smaller without lawyers, guards, or polished tables surrounding him. Bella placed Luca into his arms. Matteo's hands trembled as he stared at his grandson. I failed Adriano, he whispered. Power made me think providing was the same as raising. Bella watched him carefully. Then don't make that mistake twice. Matteo nodded and removed an old brass key from his pocket. It belonged to a private vault containing his late wife's jewelry, family letters, and the original handwritten Moretti charter. Those are not company assets, he said. They are family. Bella accepted the key, but Matteo kept holding it for 1 second longer. There is something inside you must read before you decide whether I deserve your forgiveness. Bella looked down at Luca, then back at Matteo. The empire had changed hands. Her son had arrived, and yet the oldest Moretti secret was still waiting behind a locked vault door. 2 years later, Bella opened Matteo's private vault on the morning of Luca's 2nd birthday. She had deliberately waited. The brass key had remained locked inside her desk while she rebuilt Moretti Holdings, raised her son, finalized her divorce, and learned that power was easiest to abuse when people convinced themselves they deserved it. Inside the vault were Elena Moretti's jewelry, family photographs, handwritten letters, and the original Moretti charter. Beneath them lay a sealed amendment dated 7 years before Bella discovered Bianca. Bella broke the wax and read slowly. Matteo had changed the succession rules long before Adriano's betrayal. Control of the family's protected holdings would never automatically belong to the reigning boss or eldest male heir. Stewardship would pass to whoever demonstrated the judgment necessary to preserve the dynasty for the next generation. Bella found Matteo in the penthouse library while Luca played nearby. Age had softened the old man. "You knew Adriano might lose everything," Bella said, placing the amendment before him. Matteo shook his head. "I knew he might lose control. There is a difference." He admitted that Adriano had spent years believing his surname guaranteed ownership. Matteo had created the clause hoping responsibility would change him. It never did. Then Bianca appeared, Bella said. Matteo's eyes lowered. Bianca exposed what was already there. He looked toward Luca. "And you exposed something else." Bella understood. Matteo had not chosen her because she was pregnant, obedient, or betrayed. He chose her because when given evidence capable of destroying Adriano publicly, she asked first how to protect the child and the legitimate businesses. That evening, the penthouse filled with guests for the launch of the Luca Moretti Foundation. It supported children's hospitals, education, and neighborhood arts programs. The rooms Adriano once filled with men competing to appear powerful now held doctors, teachers, artists, executives, and families. Bella stood before the harbor windows in a simple green dress, while Luca slept against Matteo's shoulder. She announced that Moretti Holdings would measure its future not only through profit, it would measure it through what remained safe after those profits were earned. The applause was warm, but Bella's eyes stayed on her son. She no longer needed applause to know who she was. Across Boston, Adriano watched part of the event on television from the modest apartment he paid for himself. He was not penniless. He had started a smaller logistics firm, but he discovered how difficult success became when no family trust opened doors for him. Bianca had left months earlier. Their relationship survived luxury, but not ordinary life. Adriano switched off the television before Bella's speech ended. For the first time, he understood that she had never stolen his empire. He had lost the family's trust before she ever received it. After the guests departed, Bella carried Luca toward the same window where she had signed the divorce papers. Boston glittered beneath them. Once those lights had looked like bars around a beautiful prison. Now they looked like possibilities. Matteo approached and placed the original charter beside her. "It is yours to protect," he said. Bella shook her head gently. "No, it belongs to everyone who comes after us. I'm only holding it for them." Matteo smiled because that was the answer he had waited 7 years to hear. Bella kissed Luca's forehead and looked across the harbor. Adriano had believed being boss made him owner. Bianca had believed becoming his mistress would make her queen. Both had mistaken access for ownership and luxury for power. Bella had learned the difference. She never inherited the Moretti kingdom because she defeated her husband. She inherited its responsibility because when everyone else was trying to possess it, she was the only one trying to protect it. And the pen that signed her divorce never shook because Bella had not been signing away her future. She had been taking it back.